I see that record button. I'll just get there. It is. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. Coach Chris and I are here to talk to you a little bit about the different levels of meets and time standards and a little bit like motivational times. Things you've probably seen before, like B, double B, A, double A, all the way up to quad A. And just kind of put it in perspective and help you guys understand it a little bit better. And then once we get through that, I think we're going to approach it in a sense that, like, how do we frame that in the season? How do we measure expectations? How do we, create that plan and realistically approach a season and a career of swimming? So I know that was a bit of a mouthful, but anyways, we're just going to break it down. It's pretty basic once we get through it. Coach Chris is going to start by talking about time standards and different levels of meets. So Coach Chris, please go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Brendan.
One thing, if you do have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to cut you off. But anyway, just throw them in the chat and we'll try to answer them at our earliest convenience. All right, Coach Chris, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, Brendan. So what I'm going to be discussing is all like the mathematical side. So this little pyramid here is the different levels of meets and qualifying championships. And beneath, I've already annotated a little bit on it. Beneath this line here at the high school level and below is all led and kind of run by the separate LSCs in the nation. So Illinois Swimming will hold the senior state, age group state, regionals, and the conference meets. A house of delegates really get together, discuss who's going to host what, when they're hosting it, and stuff like that. Then we approach this high school level of swimming and above, and everything at this level tends to be at a national run level. So USA Swimming looks over this, not just the individual LSCs, which is like a state. So at the next level above high school, we have championship meets such as Speedo Summer Sectionals, Future Championships, Speedo Sectionals, which happens in the winter, and then zones zones is essentially age group sectionals, right? So after you've qualified for those and we've really killed it at the age group level, and we're at that national junior team, nationals, junior nationals, and we approach that collegiate D1, Division I, Division II, and Division III swimming. That is kind of like highbrow end swimming, where we compete at that national level. So junior nationals is nationals with slightly easier cuts for 18 and under athletes. Any athlete that makes that cut and is 18 and under can attend that meet. It's a very fun meet. After the national level, it becomes a worldwide kind of arena, where the highest being the Olympics, followed by Olympic trials and world champ trials and world champs on the off years when Olympics aren't happening. After you've qualified and really done well at nationals, you approach this level of swimming. Olympic trials is the national level, but there and every 4 years we do decide who we're going to send to the Olympics. So that is a worldwide arena and stage. So those are all of the championship meets with specific time standards that you have to qualify for. However, there is another thing called motivational times. These are different from the time standards. They are different from regional times, different from state times. This is purely based on how well you do compared to other people, your gender, your age, and whether or not they're swimming yards or long course and stuff. So your swim is based on competition for these. So the very first one I'd like to explain is B. B is when your swimmer is ranked top 55% of swimmers in the nation. Meaning if you get a B cut, you're a top half of everyone that you are competing against in the nation. So that alone is extremely, extremely impressive. Okay? The cuts do get a little scary and a little intimidating as we move on through them. The next one is double B. This means that your swimmer is 35, top 35% of swimmers in the nation that you're competing against, your age. Next is A. When you're top 15, the number does get very, very small here. Double A is when you're top 8%. So this is when you've broken the 10% range of competition. Next is 6, triple A. And then quad A to finish it off. Quad A is when you have beaten 98% of the competition. So when you qualify, we did have a girl last year, Joyce Yoon, qualify for a few quad A cuts, which is awesome. That means that she is the top 2% of swimmers her age in the nation that went that time. It's a very impressive feat. And if you ever get one, you should be very, very proud of those. These motivational times, their purpose is to just motivate you to compete. Even though we might not be able to compete right now, using these motivational times is a fantastic way just to see where you're at compared to other people your age that are swimming at the same time. Okay? That pretty much wraps up the numbers. Again, if you think of any questions, feel free to ask and we will answer them at the end. But here is Coach Brendan with how to approach these numbers.
Okay, so thank you, Coach Chris. Well, first, I wanted to talk about like an athlete progression, and I wanted to touch a little bit about how that looks in terms of a season, like a single season versus several seasons, the course of like a career. Right, and the reason being is that like with certain swimmers and at any point in the year, we might see some random swimmer for no reason, no explainable reason, that they just drop a crazy amount of time at some meet. And you're thinking like, that's just crazy. Like, it doesn't make any sense. This kid went from like, he dropped 10 seconds in 100. And I've seen it plenty of times as a coach. I know Coach Chris has seen it. And I know as an athlete, when I was about, like when I started, I didn't really understand why that was. And I learned a lot over the years through my career of swimming and my short time coaching now, a little bit how that progression really works and why these things are. We'll touch a little bit more on exactly when improvement really happens later. But again, kind of starting here with just talking about the season. So when we go through a season, all right, we generally, as coaches, will try to train the aerobic base first to kind of build that aerobic capacity to allow us to swim for those longer distances, really competing in 100s, 200s, and when we get old enough, 400s, 500s, and above, up to like a mile. I know your swimmers might not be there yet, but maybe one day, you know, some food for thought. But anyways, we start there, that aerobic base. And once we kind of have that, then we work through what we like to call the anaerobic base, the sprinting side of swimming, right? We work that race speed, and we train a lot of starts, turns, and do a lot of sprints and tough practices and things. And basically the big thing to understand there is that when we're going through the season, you're going to be, going through rigorous training, and your body's going to be reacting differently at different times. So what you might see, generally, the end of the season is what we're really working towards. So you'll see a lot of time drops towards those last couple meets. But those first couple meets, I mean, it really does depend on the age a little bit, but as you get older, those first couple meets might be a little bit slower. And just trying to put that into perspective, it doesn't mean you are getting worse. All it means is that that's where we're at right now. And you got to take into account all of the practices you've been doing, the training you've been doing. If you've been working on a new technique, that's another thing that will take time to adjust for. Okay? And then when we get to those meets, it's not like we start the first meet and we're right where we were at the end of last season. No, when we start that first meet, I mean, we kind of reset. We regress just a little bit. But that's because that training wasn't there behind us. We'd taken some time off. Okay, so we got to build that back up again at the beginning of season. All right, and as we go through a career, we look at it from that perspective. All right, multiple seasons. As you start off awfully young, like the two swimmers we have here today, all right, you'll notice kind of it starts a little slow, okay, but you might see like a quickly, like, oh, I'm dropping lots of time in a bunch of events, getting really fast and like a whole bunch of ones. I'm dropping time in everything, every meet I go to. And that's great. That's how it should start out eventually. And if you haven't gotten there yet, it's a lot of fun. Trust me, you will get there, okay? But eventually, you know, as you know, your kids grow and you become bigger people, more muscle, able to pull more water, train more aerobically, right? You become a more powerful swimmer. Okay, so you'll see a rapid increase when we start to grow, and then once we kind of stop growing, we generally see what is called a plateau. All right, and that's the big taboo word you never want to hear about, like a plateau. Like when I was a swimmer, I was always frustrated, like, oh, why am I not dropping time? I'm sitting stagnant. I'm not really getting any faster. When that happens, you really got to take into lots of things into account here. Okay, and that kind of brings me to my next point, things to understand about improving. All right, and this is first point here. I want to talk about how coaches and swimmers view races differently. Okay, swimmers, and I was in the same boat for a long time. When I touch the wall, the first thing and only thing that goes through my mind is, what did that time say on the board? That's it. All right, and if it's faster than my best time, I'm super psyched. But if it's not faster, then I'm not very psyched. I'm pretty upset. Like, why didn't I go faster? All right, it wasn't until I became a coach that I really understood that it is more than just the time. Okay, I tell my swimmers in junior performance this all the time. I'm not concerned about what time you went. I'm concerned about how you swam it. Did you strategize? Did you prepare yourself mentally and physically? Did you do everything you could do to go that best time? Okay, so there's a lot of factors to consider here. All right, and if you are doing everything you're doing, maybe we look at your training and say, how do we approach that differently to maximize your results? Okay, kind of stressing the importance of meets there really helps us track ourselves. And I talked a little bit about that in the main Shark Q meeting. So anyways, moving on. You can't predict breakthroughs. You really can't. You never know when someone's going to drop that crazy amount of time. It could happen at any time. And part of that, understand that you can't control what anyone else does. As a swimmer, the only person you can control is yourself. Okay? And that's in practice, that's in meets. All right? If someone else is dropping time, it doesn't mean you're not doing as good as you should be, because they're getting faster and you're not. Okay? You are getting better. You're improving. You're doing all the things you need to, but you can't predict when that's going to happen. All right? You have to be patient with a lot of this. Trust the process is what my coach used to always say. Trust the process. Okay. Improvement doesn't happen all at once. All right? Especially at this next point too, I'm going to tie that together. The better you get, the harder it becomes to improve. All right? A lot of people swim for miles and miles and years, decades even, to drop tenths, hundredths of a second. Okay? That's the reality of swimming. A little bit, especially when you get to that like college level. Coach Chris and I, we kind of understand, you know, we go best times a lot when we're younger in grade school and then into high school a little bit. But then, you know, you start to kind of level off a little bit. You've got to create, that's what your coach is there for, you know, to help you create a better path to success, you know, through training. All right. And understand that just because your times aren't getting faster does not mean you're not improving. All right. Again, times are not the only thing to consider when you look at a race. Okay. And then kind of circling it all up again, you improve at your own rate. Okay? You put everything you need to into practice. You put 100% effort, 100% focus. Okay? You will see those results. You will. All right? If you set out the plan, if you talk with your coach, if your coach does goal meetings, it's not a bad thing to do. All right? Even if it's optional, I recommend it. It's a great way to approach a season. All right? And once you have that plan down, you can really actively engage yourself a little bit better in workouts throughout the season. Okay? And just keeping in mind that just because someone else is improving drastically, dropping that 10 seconds in the 200 just because, no single concrete reason for it, all right, doesn't mean you aren't getting better yourself, because we all improve at our own rate. Okay? I know it was a bit of a long-winded rant there, but that pretty much sums it up right there. Expectations really help. I mean, they can rephrase this a little bit. Goal setting is extremely important. It helps frame the season. It helps us really frame our careers as swimmers where we want to be and what we need to do. Okay? So with that, I hope you really learn something about the structure we have in USA Swimming with regards to the meets, time standards, and how we really approach getting there. Okay, trust the process. All right, it won't happen overnight, but it will happen if you do all the things you need to.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Coach Brendan. I'm going to stop the recording.